Welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast presented by Fishhawk Electronics. If you're looking for news, tips, and stories about fishing the Great Lakes, you've come to the right place. And now your host, Chris Larson.
Hello and welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast. Today our guest is Captain Ben Roggie from River Valley Charters near the Fort Drum Watertown area of New York. This is on the far northeast corner of Lake Ontario. Ben, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Ben, most of the people we've interviewed on Lake Ontario are fishing the west side of the lake in that kind of Niagara Bar area, Toronto maybe. How is the fishing different on that end of the lake compared to where you are on the far east end?
Really, across the lake, you have the same species, but there's certain areas that kind of have, I would say, better fishing for certain species. For example, the Niagara area, just a fantastic area for steelhead. We get the steelhead on the east end of the lake and, in our northeast corner, but it's more of a fish of chance. I mean, we catch them here and there fishing for other species. It's not typically something we target. And I have several people that fish with me every year that actually specifically book trips, on that end of the lake for specifically for steelhead. So, there's pros and cons to both sides of the lake, I guess. All the fish are there, but, they definitely have the steelhead fishery down there.
You run your boat out of Henderson Harbor. How does the lake set up from there when you're heading out of harbor?
It's a really nice harbor. I mean, I've caught some criticism from other captains, friends of mine, that are more on what we call the south shore of the lake, because sometimes we do have to travel a little bit to get to the salmon and the cold water fish. But overall, it is, in my opinion, the best place to dock a boat on the lake. We have the warm water fishery, right there in the harbor, as well as to our north and the northeast. You got Chameau Bay, Black River Bay. It's all right there within a short distance. And then you come around what we call Six-Town Point, and you start heading out over the infamous trench of our area, what we call the trench, where all our salmon stage in the late summer. Then you start getting out into the deeper water for the cold water fish, lake trout, browns, salmon, and all of that. So we kind of got, in my opinion, we got the best of both worlds up here. There's rarely a day we can't fish. We can always get out of the wind. We can always go somewhere, and there's always something to target.
What species are you targeting as the year kind of goes by?
Well, we start in the spring. We typically start a little bit later than a lot of people. That's one downside of being in Henderson, because we have to wait for ice out, and we're one of the last places to lose ice. So our boats get put in a little bit later, but we usually start right around the 1st of May and targeting browns. Brown trout fishing throughout the month of May in our area is pretty good. We usually don't have to go too far south to find them, and a lot of times they're right here in, just outside of Henderson. Right in front of Stony Creek, Stony Point Light, Drowned Island. Anybody that fishes Lake Ontario will know all those names. Great areas to find them shallow water spring browns. From there, we move into the deep water. We get into our lake trout. We do catch some kings early summer. It's a little bit later for us up in our neck of the woods for the kings. We really start to see a good king bite usually in July, moving into August and September. Spring also brings great northern fishing, walleye, smallmouth bass, even catch and release earlier in the year before the season opens. We pick up a lot of smallies on the spoons off the boards, fishing for shallow water fish. So, from there we just move into the kings in the summer, a lot of cold water fish in the summer. And then as we get later in the year and we start to fish for those staging salmon, a lot of your warm water fish that kind of went a little more dormant and during the summer months, that starts picking up again. Your northern pike, your pickerel, your walleye, smallmouth, all of that. Very
cool. So definitely a multi-species type adventure. What does your king program look like, Ben?
Well, it all depends, I guess, on a lot of factors. There's a lot of variables with the kings. As with most charter captains in the Great Lakes, they're one of the most popular fish to target. A lot of people want your kings, and earlier in the year, we like to run a spoon program. I have very good success on a spoon program with the kings, but another thing that we always try to use is meat rigs. We always try to mix in regardless of what time of year it is, a meat rig in with our spoon program, whether it be just above or just below. We try to get that flasher in there to draw the kings into our pattern. And if the meat's really firing, it's something that we always have on the boat. If we can't keep them off 1 or 2 paddles, we'll rotate into pretty much a full meat pattern, flasher flies with some meat. But typically early in the summer, I've just had better luck on the spoons. I don't really think there is a magical answer to what to run. I think I know guys who run on the same day a completely different pattern than me, done very successful on it, and they're fishing, within a quarter mile of me, and and I'm catching the same fish on spoons. If I switch over to what they're doing, I can't catch the fish, So it's whatever you're comfortable with, but we really like the spoons. When we get later in the season, we start to get into August. We notice that flasher fly bite really starts to pick up. We start to shy away from the spoons a little bit more. We still run the meat a lot, but that's usually when we start to move into our flasher fly patterns. Once we get towards our staging fish, we start to look for different types of strikes, whether it be reaction strikes or whatnot, especially with staging fish. Sometimes, especially if your temperature's off or something, the best thing you can do is just run a paddle and a fly past them and just try to make them mad and entice them to strike, instead of looking for those feeding fish. But yeah, so it's, we do change from spoons towards flies, more later in the year. But I always like to start with a spoon pattern. I just had my, best success on it early in the season.
What is your favorite spoon?
My favorite spoon, I don't know if I really have a favorite. I'm a Michigan Stinger guy, and that's just, I'm just comfortable pulling them behind the boat. But we run a lot of different spoons. I'd have to say if I had a favorite spoon, it would be a Northern King. Northern Kings with I'm terrible with spoon names, but just a black silver with the silver stripe across the black. I don't know what NK calls it. I never really pay attention. I know what they look like, and that's what I grab when I go to the tackle shop. But that probably hands down is on my boat killed more fish than whether it be kings, trout. It doesn't matter than any other spoon. It's always something that there's rarely a trip where we run the spoon pattern where that doesn't get put on a hook or put on a rod and sent down somewhere. So that's
How about your flasher fly combo? What's the
flasher flies, man? I'm a natural color kind of guy. When you can't do anything with them, I typically it's the natural colors that really put the fish on the boat. So my favorite is probably a green flasher with a silver back. It's a green, I believe it's Pro Troll E-chip, and it's just got silver and silver on both sides. And then personally, I like to run my favorite fly is a stud fly. I like running the stud fly behind that, and that's whether it be in a small paddle or a big paddle. Again, that's a paddle that will be in my pattern at some point, throughout the day.
I always like to ask people this: what's one thing that they do really well? Like, what is kind of your bread and butter? Where do you hang your hat as a captain? We advertise that we're multi-species fishermen, but I never try to put too much emphasis into one species of fish. When I'll take people fishing for whatever they want to fish for, but I always tell everybody, come with an open mind. I would say 98% of the people that get on my boat, their main goal with me is to catch fish. Now, they may prefer to catch salmon versus trout. They may want to target some lake or some walleye. I always tell them, we know what's going on. We know what's going on with the lake. We know what everybody's catching. I can tell you what I've been catching and what I haven't been. So, come with an open mind. If you want to put fish on the boat, that's exactly what we'll do. If they specifically want to target, I get some guys that are just adamant about salmon. They've caught their lake trout. They've caught their browns. They've done it all. And it's just the one thing that they really enjoy. And they would rather come back with a cooler with 1 or 2 fish on a tough day than go out and catch a limited lake trout or,
So you do get those, we call them the diehards. They want to grind it out, which I love doing. I just love getting on that lake and chasing, salmon all up and down that lake and just trying to figure them out. And, it's a lot of fun for me. But typically people want to catch fish. So I would say our bread and butter fish is the lake trout. It really is. Every trip, we always try to target salmon. We either start on them or we end with them, depending on how the lake trout bite has been, how the salmon bite has been. But we always start on the kings. I never just go out for that easy limit. So we'll always put that effort in, and typically we'll put a couple of kings on the boat, even on a bad day, even on a slow day. But we always leave time for putting some trout on the boat. It usually doesn't take long. Everybody boats their fish, which usually is not the case, but some people are a little bit better at it than others. But as long as we're able to slide the net under them all, the lake trout's usually pretty quick. Really on a cold water trip, we target, I would say from June through August, we target 3 species of fish, and that's lake trout, brown trout, and salmon. And a typical day is usually we start on the salmon, and depending on how the bite goes, we'll either move towards the trout or we'll stay on the salmon. And once we get on the trout, we try to put the limit on as quickly as we can, and then we will slide back in to the shallower water and try to finish the day out on browns, which I don't see a whole lot of people doing up here. And it kind of baffles me because our brown trout fishing in the summer is phenomenal. And a lot of people think browns, they think spring, they think that first thing you catch when you get the boat on the water. And then by, late June, everybody's kind of forgot about them. They're kind of my saving grace. I always call the browns like just my saving grace. They're my savior because we drive right past them on the way back to the dock. So regardless of whether we've had a good day or a bad day, I always try to leave at least an hour, hour and a half for fishing for browns. We'll drop, Michigan stingers down to the bottom. They're always laying right off bottom or just off. You find that right temperature, and as soon as you find the temperature, you find the fish. I mean, your graph just lights up. And the nice thing about browns is they always seem to be somewhat hungry. So even later in the morning when everything else is kind of dying off, we can usually put an extra, 5 or 6 or maybe more, depending on the bite. I mean, if I can't keep them off the hook, we stay there until we catch the limit, But it's really nice. It makes for, a nice multi-species day. I've had a lot of days where we might be, because our salmon and our brown limit is the same. So we might be 3 or 4 fish shy of our salmon limit. We got a few lake trout on the boat or whatever on the way back in. I'm like, let's spend an extra 30, 45 minutes on some browns, see what happens. And, within 20 minutes, you're limited out. You catch your 4 browns, and it's like, cool, So, yeah, so they're a lot of fun. But like I said, I don't see a whole lot of people doing it. A lot of people, the people that do fish them really don't hide the fact that they're there. But again, like I said, I always try to tell people when you come fishing with me, go with an open mind. A lot of people just seem to get so focused on one species of fish, and then next thing you know, their season's over, and I get friends of mine that fish for salmon. I mean, they're big salmon guys, but they're like, oh man, I wish I would have slid in and caught some browns where you were catching them there back in July or whatever. And I'm like, why didn't you? I wanted to catch the salmon, and I'm like, well, they were right there. I mean, it was a quarter-mile run from where you were fishing. You could have just So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fish out there. It's we try to tell people just don't try not to focus on one thing. Let's kill some fish.
That sounds like a good time going out there and going after lots of different species. But it's mid-November right now. The Lake Ontario season's pretty well wrapped up. What are you up to right now?
Well, in the fall we run hunting trips. So I do fishing from May through September, and we start in September with our resident goose season. We hunt right through beginning of January for waterfowl, ducks and geese, and then we get a short break, which we would typically do shows, but this year with the COVID and everything, it's just not going to happen. There's just no shows for us to be doing. All of ours got canceled, so I'm actually going to have some time off, which is really nice because it doesn't happen very often. But then we start in February with snow geese. We travel to Pennsylvania. We follow that migration up to New York, all the way to the St. Lawrence River. And then by the time I'm done with that, it's beginning of April. The boat's getting ready to get put in the water. So we start getting everything ready for summer, and it's just right back to it again. So the process just starts over. So there's always something to do. It's really nice. And usually by the time I'm done with the fishing, I'm ready for the hunting. Not that I don't like it. It's just once you're just ready for the next thing. Same thing with the hunting. By the time I'm done with snow goose hunting, I'm just like, man, I'm just ready to get on that boat, and you're just ready for that fishing season. So you never really get burnt out of one thing when you're constantly moving into, different seasons. And, so it's a fun career. I got to say, I've had worse jobs.
You mentioned ice on the harbor earlier, and I know you do some ice fishing trips too. Tell us a little bit about those ice trips.
Yeah, we do offer some ice fishing trips. It's not as popular. Something about paying us to go sit on the ice and catch fish. I don't know. It's kind of hard to sell, but we do offer them, and there's great ice fishing up here, even for the person that wants to come up and do it themselves. I get a lot of people that call me just asking where to go and what to fish for, what we have, and there's just a lot of opportunities. Chameau Bay is an excellent place to go. Probably one of the more popular spots, but great walleye fishing through the ice. Great northerns, pickerel, and in the bays there, and shallow waters. But the perch fishing the past few years has been pretty good out there, and that's kind of what everybody goes for is the walleye and perch out in Chameau Bay. You've got Black River Bay and a lot of areas. Just any of the bays up here are just phenomenal for perch, pike, and walleye. You can find some crappie in certain areas, good crappie fishing. Personally, I kind of shy away from the lake in the St. Lawrence River when I ice fish. I'm just a smaller body of water ice fisherman. I would say Red Lake is probably my favorite because it's just a multi-species lake, and we've had days where we catch crappie, bluegill, perch, pike, and walleye out of 6 hours of fishing one day, and out of the same holes. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy Red Lake. A lot of rod action, a lot of tip-up action. Another one that I really enjoy fishing is Pleasant Lake, which is a private lake here in Carthage. It's because it's private. There's no actual public access, so you kind of got to know somebody to get on it. But it's just a lot of fun. There's not a lot of big pike in there, but it's just a lot of fun. Good crappie fishing, and I'll usually do my night bites out there for crappie. So yeah, I just kind of shy away from the big water when it comes to the ice fishing. I really can't tell you why. I just, and for whatever reason, enjoy fishing smaller lakes. It's not that one's better than the other, it's just, I just enjoy the smaller lakes. But there's a lot of options up here for ice fishing. It's very popular.
So you wanted to talk about today that I didn't ask you about?
I guess to touch base on our walleye, that's one thing that we're really going to try to push a little bit more. We really haven't advertised it hard, and we just don't seem to get a whole lot of interest in it. A lot of guys want the cold water fish. But one thing we're going to start pushing a little bit more is the walleye. We've got a great trophy fishery up here. Now, it's not a numbers fishery. It's not Lake Erie. But the guy that wants that really nice 8 to 10 pound walleye, it's a great place to do just that and catch that fish. The few walleye trips we ran this year were very successful. We had one where the boat actually limited out, which I would tell everybody not to expect that when you fish Lake Ontario, but we just had a really good day. Like I said, it's not Erie, but we averaged 8 pounds on the fish, and it was just amazing, but that's, the first fish that came over the boat was 8.5 pounds, and the guys were very excited, and I was like, well, that's what we catch here. That's the average fish. If we only catch 2 more, they'll probably be about the same size. So that's one thing we're going to try to push for this year is try to get a few more walleye trips, try to spend some more time on the eyes. I'll be honest with you, I'm more of a salmon fisherman. I just put a lot of time into the salmon, but the walleye are there, and it is a great, especially later in the summer, it's a great opportunity for the people that want to fish both walleye and salmon. They're coming back into our bays. They're coming back from the deeper areas. They're migrating back, and you can spend your first hour on eyes, usually put a couple eyes on the boat, and then just slide over into the trench, get a little bit deeper, and drop down for kings, and knock out both fish in the same day. So that's one thing we're going to try to work for next year is to do those multi-species trips on walleye and salmon.
people want to know more about you, where to find you, Captain Ben, where can they find you?
Well, we're on Facebook, River Valley Charters, and you can find us online, rivervalleycharters.com. The hunting is actually under a different name. That's Black River Valley Outfitters. Same thing. We have a Facebook and a website, and I usually cross post between those two. So if you find one page, you'll find the other. But yeah, and it's named River Valley. We don't really fish the river that much, but I cut my teeth on the Black River growing up as a kid, and so that's just kind of what I named the business is after, is the Black River, and it empties into Lake Ontario. So I guess it is a part of Lake Ontario, but that's all of my, most of my my hunting especially, and a lot of my fishing. I did have a very good mentor with the fishing, but for the most part, all the basics and everything have been self-taught, and a lot of that just goes right back to the Black River Valley of our area. So that's just what I named everything after.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, Captain Ben. Really appreciate your time and your insight, and it was fun to talk to you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast presented by Fishhawk Electronics. For more information on fishing the Great Lakes, visit our blog at fishhawkelectronics.com.